Desolation Road, I-90. Part 1. The Last Rig. Running Interstate 90 wasn't a road anymore. It was the fossilized spine of a dead country, stretching from the corpse of Seattle to the ghost of Boston. Where once there had been a river of steel and light, now there was a graveyard of rust and silence, punctuated by islands of feral violence. The asphalt was cracked and weed-choked. The skeletons of cars formed modern tumuli in the passes, and in the heart of South Dakota, where the prairie stretched out to swallow the sky, the last diesel-powered heartbeat thrummed through the decaying veins. The rig was a legend, the Prairie Schooner, a Kenworth W1990, but so heavily modified it was more armored vehicle than truck. Slab-sided steel plates covered the cab and trailer, welded with brutal practicality. The windshield was a narrow slit of ballistic glass. Puncture-proof Michelins, half deflated to grip rubble, carried its immense weight. From its grill, a makeshift cow-catcher plow, forged from I-beams, hung ready to clear paths. On its roof, a solitary 50 caliber M2 Browning, operated by a jerry-rigged remote from inside the cab, spoke of serious persuasion. Its crew was a triad of necessary dysfunctions. Harlan Hawk Jessup, the driver, 60 years old with a face like a topographical map of the Badlands and hands that had gripped a wheel for 40 of them. He knew every inch of I-90, every pothole from Buffalo to Billings, every runaway truck ramp and rest stop. His law was the road, and his Bible was a tattered, hand-annotated atlas. Kai, the engineer, a former HVAC and hydraulic specialist from Minneapolis, she was in her 30s, all sharp angles and sharper intellect. Her domain was the growling Cummins X15 engine behind them, and the precious cargo in the sealed, temperature-controlled 40-foot trailer. She could keep the schooner running on rancid biodiesel, moonshine, and prayer. Preacher, the scout and moral arithmetician, an ex-Army chaplain whose faith had calcified into a cold, pragmatic ritual, he operated the drone, a quiet, solar-charged quadcopter they called the Prophet. He calculated risk, negotiated with bandits via CB radio, and made the calls on who to help, who to bypass, and when to use the Ma-Deuce. Their cargo was not food, medicine, or ammunition. It was something more foundational, a modular aquasynthesis unit, MASS-U, a prototype capable of turning contaminated water chemical, biological, even mildly radioactive into pure H2O at an industrial scale. In the trailer, bolted to a custom pallet, sat the humming, gleaming core of the unit, along with terabytes of schematics and a starter culture of the proprietary biofiltering algae. Their destination, a rumored enclave in the Ohio Valley calling itself New Covenant, where engineers and agriculturists were trying to rebuild a node of civilization. The MASS-U was their cornerstone. Without it, they were just another thirsty tribe. With it, they had a chance. They were 3 days out from their last stop, a tense barter with a fortified farming co-op in eastern Wyoming for fuel and fresh eggs. The Prophet's camera feed showed the road ahead, a bleak ribbon cutting through the empty grasslands. The primary threat here wasn't hordes. The emptiness of the plains had seen to that, but the road reapers. Motorized marauders on chopped-down motorcycles and modified diesel pickups, who preyed on any movement, stringing cable wires across the road or creating false blockades to funnel prey into kill zones. Prophets picking up heat signatures. Preacher's calm voice came through the cab's intercom. 2 miles ahead, just past the Murdo exit, cluster of vehicles, maybe 8, 9 souls. They're not moving, parked across both lanes. Hawk didn't slow. Slowing was death. Trap? Classic Reaper setup, burned out school bus on the right shoulder as a blind. Likely ambush from the ditch behind it. They'll have a cable or a spike strip. Kai was already monitoring engine temps and fuel pressure. We can push the bus. Cowcatcher will take it. But if they've got explosives, Hawk's eyes never left the narrow slit of road. Preacher, give 'em a show of force. One burst, 50 yards short of the bus. Let 'em know we see 'em and we're not stopping. Preacher's hands danced over his console. On the roof, the Browning swiveled with an electric whine. A second later, a thunderous brrrr echoed across the prairie. Dirt and asphalt erupted in a line 50 yards ahead of the bus. The response was immediate. Figures scrambled from the ditch. The cable they were preparing went slack. But they didn't flee. A pickup truck, its bed mounted with a welded steel cage, roared out from behind the bus and took up position in the center of the highway, facing them. A man stood in the bed, waving a white flag in one hand, a megaphone in the other. "Don't shoot! Parley! We have a trade!" The tinny voice crackled over their open CB channel. Hawk's jaw tightened. "Parley my ass! It's a stalling tactic." Kai leaned forward. "The Prophet's thermal shows only the one truck visible. The others have pulled back. Could be legit desperate." "Desperation is the Reaper's favorite tool," Preacher said, but he opened the channel. "State your business. You have 10 seconds before we clear the road." "We have a pregnant woman," the voice pleaded, genuine panic edging through. "Breech birth. She's dying. We have a midwife, but no clean water, no antibiotics. We know what you carry. We can smell the clean water from your exhaust condenser. Just a gallon. A trade. We have diesel." Hawk and Kai exchanged a look. The mass-used condenser did bleed off excess pure water vapor. It was a flaw, a scent of wealth on the foul air. Preacher's face was stone. "It's a classic sympathy play, Hawk." "Prophet scan," Hawk growled. "One heat sig in the cab of the truck. Smaller. Could be a woman. Can't confirm pregnancy." The schooner was a quarter-mile away now, closing at a steady 40-mile-an-hour. The decision point was here. Hawk's law warred with a deeper, older code. He'd been a father once. Before the fall, he made the call. "Kai, prep a 5-gallon jerry can from the auxiliary tank. We toss it out as we pass. No stopping. Preacher, you have the gun on that truck the entire time. They flinch, you erase it." They slowed to 20. The side access hatch just behind the passenger seat groaned open. Kai hefted the heavy plastic can, filled with crystal-clear water from their own drinking supply. The man on the truck bed lowered his flag, relief on his face. As they came abreast of the pickup, Kai shoved the can out. It bounced once on the asphalt. The man jumped down to get it. It was the moment the Reapers had waited for. The pregnant woman in the cab sat up. It was a teenage boy with a pillow, and from hidden foxholes in the ditches on both sides of the highway, Reapers rose not with guns, but with long steel cable fishing gaffs. They hurled them at the schooner's tires and trailer axles, trying to snag and tangle, to rip out brake lines or lock up a wheel. Hawk swore and slammed the accelerator. The big diesel roared. One gaff caught on the trailer's rear axle with a screech of metal. The schooner lurched, but the tires were too big, the axle too solid. The cable snapped, whipping back lethally. "Preacher!" Hawk yelled. The 50 cal spoke again, a sustained burst that chewed the pickup truck into Swiss cheese and sent the Reapers diving for cover. They were through, but the damage was done. Not physical, but moral. They'd been played. Their precious water, given in a moment of compromised judgment, was gone. And worse, their route was now known. The Reapers would radio ahead. The scent was in the air. An hour later, under the vast, uncaring Dakota sky, the real challenge appeared on the horizon. Not bandits. Geography. The map called it the Okoton Pass, a long, high bridge over a deep, dry river gulch, followed immediately by a short tunnel through a ridge of rock. It was a perfect, natural choke point, and the Prophet's feed showed it was utterly, deliberately blocked. Semi-trailers had been jackknifed and set ablaze at both ends of the tunnel, creating a flaming cork in a bottle. There was no way around for a rig this size. I-90 was closed. Hawk brought the schooner to a stop a mile out. The acrid smell of distant burning plastic carried on the wind. This wasn't Reaper work. This was strategic, done by someone who wanted to control the road, not just scavenge from it. Preacher zoomed the Prophet's camera. On the canyon side of the bridge, nestled among the rocks, was a settlement. Crude huts made from car bodies and billboard tarps. A water tower. Tilled fields. A society. And flying from a pole atop the tunnel's ventilation building was a flag. A crude black fist gripping a stalk of wheat on a red field. "The Harvest Guard," Preacher said, his voice low. "We heard rumors in Wyoming. They don't just take tolls, they conscript. They enslave. They've made the past their kingdom. Kai studied the thermal overlay. The fires are fresh. They knew we were coming. The reapers tipped them off. They're not asking for a toll, Hawk. They're inviting us in. Permanently. Hawk stared at the impasse, the flames flickering in the mouth of the tunnel like a dragon's breath. The road of despair had presented its first impossible choice. Go forward into the fortified trap of the Harvest Guard, or turn back, wasting fuel and time, letting the Mare Sieu's power cells drain and admitting defeat. The prairie schooner, the last rig running, was at a dead stop, and the whispers of the wasteland were closing in. Their precious cargo wasn't just equipment, it was a beacon, and it had just drawn the attention of a king who wanted to own the only well in hell. Part 1, just 10,500 characters. Part 2, the toll of the pass. The wind howling across the Okatan Pass carried the stench of burning rubber and a deeper, fouler smell, the scent of organized, sedentary cruelty. The Harvest Guard hadn't just blocked the road. They'd built a gauntlet. The bridge before the tunnel was lined with rusting boxcars on either side, creating a kill zone. The Prophet's discreet reconnaissance showed snipers on the tunnel roof and in the boxcars. This was an invitation to die if they charged, and an invitation to slavery if they surrendered. We can't go through them, Kai stated, her finger tracing a topographic map on her tablet. And we can't go around. The gulch is a 100-foot drop, and the slopes are pure shale on both sides for 5 miles in either direction. Preacher stroked his beard, studying the settlement through the drone's eye. They have order. They have fields. That means they have a water source, probably a spring in the canyon. Their weakness is their success. They're settled. They have something to lose. Hawk hadn't moved from the driver's seat, his eyes fixed on the distant flames. They want the rig. They want what's in the trailer. They want us to run it for them, to be their royal chauffeurs. He spat into an empty cup. Not happening. An hour before dusk, their CB crackled to life. The voice was different from the Reaper's, calm, authoritative, devoid of panic or rage. Prairie schooner. This is Marshal Crow of the Harvest Guard. You've seen our welcome mat. You have 2 options. You can shut down your engine, disembark unarmed, and walk into the tunnel. Your skills will be assessed and put to use for the community. You will be fed and protected. The schooner becomes community property. The voice paused, letting the offer, thin as it was, hang in the static. Option 2, you can try to run. You will die on the bridge. We will strip the rig, and whatever's in that trailer that's worth this much trouble will be ours anyway. Your choice. You have until dawn. Silence reclaimed the cab. The ultimatum was real. They had 1 night. We don't have the firepower for a direct assault, Preacher said. The 50 cal is a terror weapon, not a siege breaker. They have fortified positions. Kai was chewing on a pencil, her mind in the guts of machines. The trailer, it's not just a box. It's a sealed environment for the Mare Sieu. Insulated, pressurized. Hawk looked at her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we give them a different kind of show of force, she said, a dangerous glint in her eye. We don't attack them. We attack their certainty. Her plan was insane. It relied on the Mare Sieu's core function, water synthesis. The unit had an emergency purge valve for its primary filtration tank, a tank currently holding nearly 500 gallons of highly concentrated, biologically active filtration slurry. It was a soup of genetically engineered algae and bacteria designed to consume toxins. In a closed environment, it was a miracle. Released explosively into the open air, it was an untested, potentially catastrophic bioevent. We turn the trailer into a sprinkler system, Kai explained. We override the safety, pressurize the slurry tank using the auxiliary compressor, and rig the purge valve to blow on a timer. We aim the vent, which is on the trailer's roof, toward the tunnel mouth when we make our run. What does it do? Preacher asked, frowning. No clue, Kai admitted. Might do nothing but make a stinky mess. Might cause rapid, uncontrolled algal growth on any damp surface. Might irritate living tissue on contact. It's a complete unknown, but it's a spectacle. It's a cloud of the unknown, and people fear what they don't understand more than any bullet. It was a Hail Mary, but dawn was coming. They worked through the cold, star-smeared night. Preacher used the Prophet to map sniper positions with pinpoint accuracy, creating a firing solution for the 50 cal to suppress them at the crucial moment. Kai, bundled up and working with frantic care in the trailer's airlock, jury-rigged the pressurized purge, linking it to a remote trigger in the cab. Hawk calculated the run. He wouldn't go for the tunnel. He'd aim for the weaker point, the blockaded bridge entrance itself. The cowcatcher could maybe shove one of the burning trailers aside if he hit it at the right angle and speed. It was a good way to flip the schooner and kill them all. As the first gray light bled into the eastern sky, Marshal Crow's voice returned. "Time's up, schooner. Your answer?" Hawk keyed the mic. "Our answer is, no thank you. We'll be going now." He didn't wait for a reply. He dropped the hammer. The Kenworth's engine bellowed, a sound of pure mechanical defiance. It surged forward, a 60-ton battering ram gathering speed. Almost immediately, shots rang out. Ping! Ting! Rounds sparked off their armor. The 50 cal on the roof roared to life in response. Preacher walking its fire across the boxcar ports and the tunnel roof in short, punishing bursts, forcing heads down. They hit the bridge at 55 miles per hour. The world narrowed to the slit of windshield, the flaming trailers looming ahead. Hawk aimed for the hitch connection between the lead trailer and its burned-out tractor, the weakest structural point. "Kai, now!" he screamed. Kai hit the remote. From a vent on the trailer's roof, a geyser of viscous, fluorescent green slurry erupted with a sound like a dying whale. It shot into the air in a pressurized arc, carried by their forward momentum, and splattered across the tunnel mouth, the burning trailers, and the front ranks of the harvest guard who had emerged to watch the spectacle. The effect was immediate and surreal. The slurry wasn't corrosive. It was prolific. Where it hit the hot metal of the burning wreckage, it sizzled and steamed, releasing a thick, sweet-rotten vapor. Where it hit the damp concrete near the tunnel, it seemed to crawl, spreading in rapidly expanding dark green blooms. Guards who were spattered screamed, not in pain, but in horror, clawing at the sticky, rapidly replicating biological gel now coating their clothes and skin. It was a weapon of psychological and biological chaos. The cloud of vapor and the terrifying rapid growth disoriented the defenders. Their disciplined volley fell apart into panicked, coughing disorder. Hawk didn't see it. His universe was the impact. The cowcatcher slammed into the trailer hitch. The sound was apocalyptic, a shriek of shearing metal. The burning trailer shuddered, tilted, and was shoved sideways with a groan, scraping a shower of sparks along the bridge's concrete wall. A path, narrow and filled with flames and debris, opened up. The schooner powered through, its paint blistering from the heat, its tires crunching over wreckage. They were in the tunnel, plunged into a strobe light hell of fire and swirling green vapor. For 5 endless seconds, they were blind. Then they burst out the other side into the clear morning air. But they weren't clear. The rear axle, damaged by the Reaper's gaff, gave a final, shuddering groan. A warning light flashed on Kai's console. "We've got a bearing going critical on axle 3. We can't keep this pace." And ahead, the road wasn't empty. The Harvest Guard's territory didn't end at the tunnel. A secondary force, mounted on dirt bikes and a dune buggy, was waiting on the exit ramp, ready to pursue and harass a wounded rig. They had broken the pass, but they were bleeding speed and trailing a visible cloud of their own exotic signature. The marshal would be furious, humiliated, and now personally invested. The schooner had won the battle but revealed its vulnerability. They were on the run, carrying a cargo that was now a known, terrifying legend, hunted by a vengeful warlord and crippled in a land that offered no shelter. The road of despair had claimed its toll, and the price was a slow, grinding chase into the heart of a dead Midwest, with the only prize being the dim hope of a destination that might not even exist. Part 2. The 10,300 characters. Part 3. The Covenant's price. The schooner limped east, a wounded titan trailing a whisper of green vapor and the specter of Marshal Crow's wrath. The bearing scream from the rear axle was a constant, high-pitched dirge. Kai, working in a harness under the moving rig, confirmed the worst. It was shot. They had spare bearings, but replacing one required a full stop, jacking up 20 tons and at least 4 hours of exposed, vulnerable work. With Crow's motley cavalry, 2 dirt bikes, and the armed dune buggy shadowing them from a mile back, a stop was suicide. Preacher's Prophet showed the terrain ahead, flattening into the endless, exposed cornfields of Minnesota. No defensible high ground, no choke points, just a green desert of stalk and ruin. "We can't outrun them, not like this," Hawk growled, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. The speedometer hovered at a pathetic 35 miles, a crawl for the open highway. The bikers could circle them like vultures, taking pot shots, waiting for a tire to fail. "We need to lose them before nightfall," Kai said, her face smeared with grease, "or they'll just follow our thermal signature in the dark." Preacher was silent, studying his maps. "There's a possibility, 20 miles ahead, the spiral." Hawk knew it, an infamous multi-level highway interchange just outside a dead suburb, a concrete pretzel where I-90 met a state highway and 2 beltways. In the before, it was a traffic nightmare. Now it was a sun-bleached labyrinth of overpasses, collapsed ramps, and thousands of abandoned vehicles. "It's a death trap," Kai argued. "One wrong turn and we're wedged for good." "It's also a maze," Preacher countered. "Their bikes have the advantage on the open road. In there, our size becomes an advantage again. We can go through barriers they have to go around. We can get lost." It was their only card. They pushed the faltering rig toward the concrete sprawl rising on the horizon. The spiral was a monument to collapse. Cars were packed so densely in some places, they formed solid walls of rust. Weeds grew from cracked pavement on the upper decks. Hawk navigated by instinct and brute force, the cowcatcher shoving smaller vehicles aside with sickening crunches, their screeching metal adding to the bearing scream. They took a ramp up to the second level, then doubled back under an overpass. The bikers followed, nimble and confident. They split up, trying to flank. One buzzed close, the rider firing a handgun at the schooner's tires. The bullet ricocheted off the reinforced rim with a spark. "They're hurting us," Preacher warned, watching the drone feed. "The buggy is setting up on the lower level, blocking the exit we need." Hawk saw it, a trap within a maze. He made a decision born of decades of road sense. He didn't try for an exit. He aimed for a weakened-looking concrete median on the third-level ramp. "Kai, all power to the drive axles. Preacher, when I hit, give me covering fire straight ahead." He didn't slow. The schooner hit the median at an angle. Concrete shattered. The world tilted violently. For a heart-stopping second, they balanced on 2 wheels. Then they crashed down, not onto the ramp they'd left, but onto the roof of a long-abandoned commercial bus on the level below. The impact was colossal. The bus's roof caved in, but it held, creating a makeshift ramp. The schooner slid, grinding, down the bus's hood and slammed back onto the roadway, now on the ground level, behind the waiting dune buggy. Preacher didn't hesitate. The obedient 50 cal swiveled and fired a single, devastating burst. The buggy vanished in a cloud of debris and flame. The 2 remaining bikers, now trapped in the maze above and their support gone, broke off. The schooner, battered but through the labyrinth, rumbled onto clear highway, leaving the spiral and its predators behind. But the victory was Pyrrhic. The landing had finished the damaged bearing. A new, deeper grinding came from the rear, accompanied by a violent shudder. They had maybe 50 miles left in it, and New Covenant was still 300 miles away. They limped into the fading light, finding a defensible spot in the carcass of a giant truck stop. While Preacher kept watch, Hawk and Kai performed the surgery. It took 6 hours of back-breaking, nerve-shredding work under the glare of work lights, every sound in the night a potential threat. But they did it. As the sun rose, the bearing was replaced, the axle packed with the last of their good grease. The schooner could run again. The final leg was a tense, silent vigil. They passed the carcass of Chicago, a silent, stinking megalith of steel and ash. They bypassed fortified towns that fired warning shots. They traded the last of their non-essential fuel for safe passage through a territory controlled by a surprisingly civil group of former railway workers. The mass-used legend, it seemed, had begun to outrun them, a story of a rig that spewed life and terror. Finally, the Ohio River Valley, greener, damper. The coordinates led them to a valley guarded by a restored pre-collapse dam. A sentry post, professional-looking with clean uniforms and functioning radios, halted them. "State your business and cargo." Hawk, exhausted to his soul, keyed the mic. "Prairie Schooner. Cargo is the MASU unit for New Covenant. We're expected." There was a pause. Then the gate, a heavy, welded steel thing, groaned open. They drove into a vision of the past. Neat rows of houses with solar panels, tilled fields, children playing in a supervised yard. The air smelled of soil and bread, not ash and decay. It was a mirage made real. They were greeted by a council led by a woman named Dr. Eris. She inspected the MASU with tears in her eyes. "You have no idea. You have no idea what this means." A feast was prepared in their honor. Real vegetables, fresh bread. It was paradise. That night in clean quarters, Kai voiced the unease they all felt. "It's too perfect." Preacher nodded. They asked no questions about the journey, about the cost. Hawk's old bones ached for this peace, but his road sense, the one that had kept him alive for 2,000 miles of hell, was tingling. The revelation came at the celebratory council meeting. Dr. Eris raised a glass. "With the MASU, we can expand, secure the next valley, bring more survivors into the fold. Our model works. Order, discipline, shared purpose." A man next to her, the head of security, added, "Your rig and your skills would be invaluable for the expansion. We have identified several communities that are resistant to integration. Your unique method of persuasion would be most useful." Hawk froze. Integration, persuasion. The words were clean, but the meaning was filthy. They saw the schooner not as a delivery vehicle, but as a weapon. The MASU not just as a tool for life, but as a lever for control. They would use the water to create dependencies, and the rig's fearsome reputation to enforce them. New Covenant wasn't a haven, it was a nascent empire, and they were being offered the role of chief enforcers. They had driven the road of despair to bring the means for life, and they had delivered it into the hands of people who saw life as something to be controlled, rationed, and used as a chain. Back in their quarters, the trio faced their final, most profound choice. "We can stay," Kai said softly. "Be heroes, have safety, warm beds." "We can't," Preacher said. "We didn't cross hell to build a prettier one." Hawk looked out the window at the quiet, ordered town. It was everything they'd fought for, and it was a betrayal of every mile, every drop of sweat and blood spilled on the I-90. The road hadn't ended. It had just forked. They waited until the deep of night. They didn't take food or supplies. They took only what was theirs, the schooner. Kai had, in a final act of subterfuge, disabled the MASU's primary logic board, rendering it a simple dumb filter until a specific, hard-to-replicate component was replaced. It would give New Covenant water, but not dominion. Not yet. They rolled out of the silent paradise as quietly as the diesel giant could. At the gate, the sentry was confused. "Council said you were staying." "Change of plans," Hawk said, his face unreadable in the dark. "The road's not done with us yet." The gate opened, and they passed back into the wild, uncertain darkness. The prairie schooner, scarred and majestic, merged back onto the forgotten interstate, its headlights cutting a lonely path through the endless American night. They had no destination now, no precious cargo to deliver, just the rig, each other, and the road itself. They had learned the final, terrible lesson of the apocalypse. The most valuable thing wasn't clean water, or safety, or even a seed of hope. It was the freedom to keep moving, to say no, to be the authors of your own doomed, beautiful story. The I-90 stretched ahead, an artery of death and despair. But for them, it had become the only thing left that was truly free. They were no longer delivery men. They were nomads of the ruin, keepers of their own stubborn, rolling covenant, and the road was their only home.